Lando Norris tops the timesheets on the opening day of pre-season testing as reliability hits an all-time high. If only the same could be said for the circuit. From Racing News 365, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm delighted to be joined, as always, by lead editor Ian Parks for what is the first paddock track-based F1 update of 2025. And Ian, it was looking for so long like we were going to have a pretty relaxed day. Lando Norris topped the timesheets, Esteban Ocon set the most laps, Isaac Hadjar and Liam Lawson had pretty harmless spins in the end. It was all until 2 hours into the afternoon session, and well, as I kind of alluded to, the circuit reliability kind of gave up. A circuit-wide power cut is something you don't hear every single day, resulting in, just over a 1 hour red flag. It was pretty extraordinary scenes, it's fair to say.
Yeah, I was standing in the pit lane, and hello everybody, and warm welcome. Well, I say warm, it's actually a little bit chilly here in Bahrain. We'll get onto that shortly. I was standing in the pit lane actually, just as things were about to go live again after that power cut. And I was speaking to a photographer, been covering Formula One for donkey's years now, even longer than I have, and that's saying something. And he said it was the first time he could ever remember a circuit anywhere, be it a test, Grand Prix, sustaining a blackout as it did during that afternoon session. As you say, we just hit the 2 hour mark in the afternoon session, so 6 hours on the day, and then we lost a complete hour of running. It got to the point where all the F1 teams were having to race out of their garages and realizing that the power wasn't going to come back anytime soon, go get a load of generators and keep the tire blankets going to keep the tires warm for that, in preparation should the track suddenly light up again and we have track action. So a really, really unusual as you say, red flag session. Never before seen, according to this photographer, and goodness knows how many Grand Prix he has covered, but it's an awful lot, I can tell you. So something different. It's a great talking point for the day, because other than that, all we would be talking about was the total reliability of every single car out there. Not a single breakdown, not a single trip into the gravel, nothing. There was the odd spin here and there, but nothing too much to write home about. Liam Lawson, as you say. Isaac Hadjar, the other one I think you mentioned, Nick.
This afternoon,
tremendous reliability. Goodness knows how many laps were covered in total by all the teams. I think it would be somewhere close to
a lot.
About 1,500. I haven't quite done that maths, but I know Haas led the way with a huge number, great total. And as I say, I think it'd be somewhere around the region of somewhere about 1,500 laps across the 10 teams.
Yeah, well, so Haas alone did 160, Racing Bulls did 154. I think it's something very, very new to see it, just on the topic of the power cut and the blackout and how all the garages just went black and the teams using torches to try and still make change. I would, and some of the helmets as well, some of the neon yellow helmets were actually glowing up. That was almost like a little bit of a light source in a way. I don't think I'll ever forget. That could be the photo of the season already, I think, and it's only the first day of 2025. But you mentioned, obviously, go on.
I was going to say, I just thought quite simply, the lights all went out and power went out in the media centre. And I actually message in our chat system that we have at Racing News 365, the media's out in the power centre, guys. And literally about 2 minutes later, we recognised it was out everywhere. It was due, folks, just in case you're wondering, to an outage at an external power substation beyond the circuit. So that's what caused the issue on this particular occasion. So very unusual. And as I said, it's given us at least a great talking point on day one of pre-season testing for 2025 here in Bahrain.
And as a result, obviously, the afternoon session, it became an evening session, really, was extended by an hour, as agreed by the FIA, the teams, and F1. And as I mentioned, in the end, it was Lando Norris on top, of course. A good lap for Lando, 1 minute 30.430, but it's obviously pre-season testing. We don't quite know what the teams are running. I mean, Haas Esteban Ocon set the most laps. He did 87 laps alone. He was 1 lap short of doing the same number of laps that Aston Martin did across the entire day. So extraordinary for Haas, who were several seconds off the pace, clearly working on race pace. But for you, Ian, do you think some of your standout points of the day? Who were you impressed by?
Lando, obviously a decent time, pretty
Yeah.
much starting this season with the way he ended last, of course. And what I'm referring there to is the fact that he was on pole position and won the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, of course. So looking good. Ferrari, very impressed with the handling of that car in particular. It looks very well planted. I've been speaking to people obviously up and down the paddock throughout the course of the day whilst I've been here. It's been pointed out to me, in particular, the way the car seems to be very well set up for Lewis Hamilton in comparison to the Mercedes. Just to give people some idea, now Ferrari have changed their front suspension, which is actually quite significant. They've gone from a long established push rod suspension to now a more conventional pull rod. So they're now mirroring the rear suspension on the car, pull and pull front and back. And what that is allowing that Ferrari to do is to allow Lewis in particular, bearing in mind we know how he likes to set up his car, to attack the corners and get on the power very quickly through them to ensure he has a good exit. That is a major issue that he was unable to overcome at Mercedes because the car just did not want to do that under these ground effect era regulations that we've had in place over the past 3 seasons. So that is a good point to look at for Lewis going into the rest of testing, and in particular, the Australian Grand Prix, of course. Is it going to be a car that's finally going to allow Lewis to do something this season? Because we know he has struggled in particular over these past 3 years under these regulations. Another point I noticed as well, Nick, was with regard to Lando Norris, the huge amount of flow of his paint that they threw over that car over the final 10, 15 minutes or so. It was so much that it almost resembled a steak side on, given the green that was all over it. It was quite remarkable. They were mopping it up off the floor. It was quite funny at one point as well when the car came back into the pits and all the mechanics rushed out and they produced
Papaya
this
wall.
human shield around the car. And there was one photographer, bless him, trying to lean over and take a picture, and somebody was trying to stop him, put his hand up. But it was all in jest, in fairness, between the photographer and the McLaren guys. But yeah, I thought that was quite striking. I thought all the rookies looked relatively comfortable.
Yeah.
Nothing remarkable, but nothing unremarkable either, with the exception of the way Haas played their day. I thought that was quite very, very different. Neither Esteban Ocon nor Ollie Behrman going for lap times. It was all about reliability, consistency. They were 3 and 4 seconds off Lando Norris's leading pace by the end of the 8 hours, or pretty much 9 hours across the course of the day combined, but of course only 8 hours of track
Yeah.
running. But they grounded out the laps, so they're looking for a good, solid, reliable car. And if that's the case, they've got a good platform out the day. Of course, we're naturally now going to expect us to ramp it up a little bit over the course of the next 2 days and give us an idea as to where they might be in that pecking order. But we always know that first day of testing, it's always about just getting those laps on the board, making sure the car is looking reasonable, reliable, and solid to go into that opening Grand Prix, which of course is just over 2 weeks away in Australia.
I was going to save this talking point until the end, but I think we should do it now because for those who are watching can see you're wearing a coat in Bahrain. I mean, I actually, after this video, I need to look at our pre-season F1 update from last year and see what you were wearing because, I mean, it is unusually cold. Not only that, I mean, we've had a few drops of rain today as well. There's actually quite a significant threat of rain for day 2 on Thursday. The FIA reporting almost for the entirety of the day looking like rain. I mean, can you just sum up what are the conditions like? Because it looks, as I can see in your face, quite cold.
It is very chilly, mate. You know, in fairness to myself, I did at least look at the weather forecast before I came
Smart.
out. So I knew to pack a jumper, to bring my jacket as well. There are a few people up and down this pit lane that didn't look at the weather
Silly.
forecast. They're in shorts, they're in a nice thin cotton shirt, and they are suffering. More for them. Next time, folks, look out for that weather forecast to give you an idea. But yeah, it's been 15 degrees pretty much across the course of the day. However, there is a bit of a wind chill factor because it has been quite breezy on occasions, and that's played a little bit of havoc as well with the cars out on track, particularly given the directional changes out wind. As we know, this circuit is in the middle of quite an open area of Bahrain, so it is quite heavily affected by that wind. But yes, I would suggest that the temperature has probably been about 8, 9, 10 degrees, given that wind. So hence why I've got a jumper on. I've got this jacket
Yeah.
on. It's all pinned up around my neck. And at the moment, yeah, as we're coming up to about 9 o'clock local time, that would be 6 o'clock UK time. We're 3 hours ahead here in Bahrain. At least the wind has dropped a little bit, so that's not too bad. But yes, it is quite chilly. But at least I'm prepared, Nick.
Let's finish on a few of the talking points from off the circuit, because of course during the lunch break there was a team principal press conference featuring 5 of the team principals and a drivers press conference featuring, guess what, 5 of the drivers. Let's start on the team principals one and Christian
No,
Horner.
no. I'm going to correct you, mate. Remember, Nico Hulkenberg didn't show up, so there were only 4 drivers.
Right, there was 4. Apologies. In my defence, my shift started as the press conference was finishing. That's my excuse. We're out there now.
We'll
but
let
let's
Nick,
start.
we'll let you, we'll
Thank you
let
very
you
much.
off, Nick. We'll let you
Thank
off.
you,
Don't
thank
worry.
you. Let's start with the team's principal press conference, which did feature Red Bull team boss Christian Horner. And interestingly, he addressed Max Verstappen's boos. Obviously, Christian was booed himself last week at F1 75. And he addressed, obviously, the FIA statement, which came out last Saturday, kind of condemning the booing of Max and Christian. But interestingly, Christian saying that actually Red Bull had no contact with the FIA. It was quite interesting what Christian was saying about the incident and how him and Max were treated last week.
Yeah, it was my question actually during that particular press conference. If I don't mind saying so myself, folks. And I asked Christian, what he felt about it, because as we know, it's become quite a talking point out of that event. Christian heavily booed. Max obviously booed. We've discussed that in this week's podcast. Um, it was unusual. It was unexpected. It was unnecessary in many respects. And Christian described himself as less for him, but more for Max, that he was disappointed with the reaction from the fans. Zach Brown was touched on it as well, and he basically turned around and said, well, look, this is sport. At the end of the day, you're going to get cheers, you're going to get poos. It's just the nature of sport. And it doesn't matter what sport it is. You've got fans for one team, you've got fans for another team. And if they don't like a particular team or a particular person within that team, then they're going to make their feelings known. And there were the boos. At least Zach said it wasn't caustic, I think, to use his word. It didn't turn nasty in any way. Apparently, there's been some comments on social media that have been a little bit caustic around all of that. And that's where you really have to be careful. But we're only talking about the reactions of some people within that arena, the O2 arena on that given night. And as I say, there were cheers, loud cheers for lots of different things on that particular occasion. So let's focus on the positive, and I think now we need to brush that one under the carpet. But of course, we know that Max is going to be asked about it when he appears in the press conference this week. In particular, bear in mind as well that his comments from his dad, Jos, who's turned around and said that his son might out boycott future events in England. So, as I say, we know it's a topic that's still going to be there in the background, but at least we have now a degree of perspective placed on it by both Christian and, of course, Zach Brown as well.
Sticking with England, George Russell was one of the 4 drivers who did turn up for the drivers' press conference, and he addressed, obviously, the change in the Mercedes camp, because, of course, for the last 3 seasons, he's been used to partnering Lewis Hamilton. He called not having Lewis there as end of a chapter. Obviously, he's now got this teenage sensation in Kimi Antonelli alongside him, but actually, for Russell, it probably is quite an interesting environment to now be a part of, having gone from, obviously, being alongside Lewis, statistically the greatest F1 driver of all time, to now being the lead driver in the camp with, quite frankly, a teenager alongside him.
Yeah. Do I dare say that was response to my question as well during the drive?
There's a theme here.
Yeah.
Who's answering the best questions, I wonder?
I did well. I did well during that press conference.
Both aired on F1 as well today.
Managed to get some good questions. And as you say, yes, the end of a chapter, the end of an era in many respects. And of course, it's a different environment now for George, because obviously, if you bear in mind that when he came into Mercedes, he kind of played that number 2 role to Lewis initially before he established himself, of course, and very much they'd been on a par. Obviously, George was a better driver than Lewis last season, of course. And now Lewis is no longer there. Lewis was very much part of the the furniture, you might as well say, at Mercedes for such a long time. So for him now to be removed from that picture, from that scene, it represents as I say, this new era for Mercedes, and very much a new era for George, because he now is the team leader. He is the one who this other young driver in Kimi Antonelli is going to be looking at for a little bit of a guidance, a little bit of advice, a little the steers during the data briefings, of course, that we know are going to take place. Just seeing how differently George might be doing things, because yes, while Kimi is, as we know, an extremely talented driver in his own right, and many people expect him to go on and do tremendous things within F1 in whatever career might pan out for him over the coming years. This is still a rookie year. He's got a lot to learn, not just this season, but next season and the season after. And he's going to need that shoulder to lean on that George will be able to provide him initially, before he himself will then become part of that establishment within Mercedes. It's going to be a fascinating dynamic between George and Kimi over the course of this season, I feel, just to see how that pans out and how Kimi is going to stack up against, as I say, a more established driver now in George Russell.
And actually, on the timesheets, Kimi was the top rookie. He was actually the driver who topped the morning session. But final talking point, and it has nothing to do with Bahrain and what's happened today. Well, it is to do with what's happened today, but nothing to do in Bahrain, because it has been approved by the FIA World Motorsport Council, bit of a tongue twister, that the Monaco Grand Prix, Ian, each driver must make 2 mandatory pit stops. Well, that's going to shake things up a little bit.
Yes, so basically they have to use a minimum of 2 sets of one particular rubber. So it could be double soft and a medium, or, you judge it for yourselves, folks, double medium and soft, whichever way round a particular driver might want to go. But it opens up all sorts of tactical possibilities, strategic possibilities. It's been mentioned as well, what if that marker decided to pit after lap 1 and then pit again after lap 2, and therefore 2 mandatory pit stops, is able to then catch up to the back of the pack at some stage through circumstances or whatever. What will then unfold with all the other drivers in front of him having to then make their pit stops? It's just one scenario that's just been thrown out there. There are many, many others, many permutations, and you can bet your bottom dollar that the strategists within every team up and down this pit wall are now going to be looking at that Grand Prix in earnest and seeing what would be the best possibilities to gain the most unusual result that might now come out of this, because we've seen what one stop in Monaco has done in the past. It does become quite a pedestrian. We always say that the best day in Monaco is Saturday, because that's qualifying day. That's when every driver puts their all into that lap with those walls so close. It is one of the best laps of a Grand Prix year. But then we come to the Sunday, and basically, unless there's any rainfall from the skies, we pretty much know that the pecking order of that grid out of qualifying is going to be pretty much how we're going to end up at the checkered flag, barring any incidents, of course. So, as I say, 2 stop now mandatory. We've got a lot to talk about in that particular build up to that Grand Prix when it comes around in May, which is only just 3 months away. Can you believe me? 3 months away to the Monaco Grand Prix. It was this past winter feels like it's dragged since we were in Abu Dhabi, to now think that we're just 3 months away from the Monaco Grand Prix, and we're going to be talking about this more in earnest when that Grand Prix does come around. It is particularly scary, yes, as you put it.
And just very quickly to bring us home, a quick look ahead to tomorrow. What are you looking forward to seeing on day 2? Because for me, I would like to see Haas and their 1-lap pace, given they've not shown any 1-lap pace at all on day 1. I think for me, it'd be interesting to see what they can do on day 2. For you, what are you looking forward to most tomorrow?
Hopefully a dry, slightly warmer day, but given the forecast that is set, we've got a good 40, 50, 60% chance of rain across the day, which is even more unseasonal. As you're saying it, we've come to expect warm, dry temperatures. That is why we've been coming to Bahrain over these past few years rather than going to Barcelona, where we know it's generally cold, occasionally snowy. We've had in the past at a
Probably
pre-season
warmer
test.
this
I
week.
do recall, but yeah, I've not looked at the temperature, but you could very well be right. It's certainly going to be on a par, that's for certain. So yeah, hopefully we do get a decent amount of running because, as I say, any disruption is going to affect the teams going into that season in Grand Prix in Australia, as we've pointed out. So yeah, hopefully we do get some good track action. I'd be very surprised if Haas does follow the same path that it has done on day one. I'm pretty certain we're going to see them ramp up their lap times. Generally, what am I looking forward to? Who's on track tomorrow? Remind me. Have we got anybody that's missed out on day one that we're definitely going to see on day two?
Majority of the teams are going for 2 drivers again, actually, which is quite interesting because normally we see most teams on day 2 or day 3 using just 1 driver, but actually across the 3 days, normally this year they seem to be using both, which is quite interesting. But I want to see Max as well really show what he can do. Let's see what the Red Bull can do. That's the big question mark, I think.
And the big question mark is, can it do anything? Now, Christian was asked about that in the press conference because it's been noted that the RB20 is very, very comparable to the RB21. It is very much a case of spot the difference because there aren't actually that many. But what Christian has suggested is that, well, whilst you might not see too much on the outside, it's what's gone on the inside and perhaps the underneath that might lend us to better clues as to the performance that we're going to get out of that RB21 over the course of the year. Is it going to be a title contender? By the looks of it, McLaren is up there. I would suggest Ferrari will definitely be in that mix. I think those two are the lead teams at the moment. Mercedes didn't look too bad across the course of the day, in fairness to it. But I think that there is this big question mark right now over Red Bull. What is the genuine pace of that car? We know we're not going to see it to the full extent until qualifying at in Melbourne on March 15, of course. But there's a lot of speculation, a lot of guessing games going on. That's pre-season testing. That's what we love about it so much.
And of course, for those who are watching this video, be sure to tune into Racing News 365 to follow along with all the action from pre-season testing live. On top of that, if you can smash a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and be sure as well to join Ian and myself for another F1 update on Thursday, at the end of Thursday, following day 2. Ian, go and get yourself warm. This has been the post day 1 F1 update from Ian and myself. We'll see you tomorrow. See you later.
As always, take care, folks.